Good morning and welcome to another episode of SMECO Connects. I'm Sonia Cox.
And I'm Tom Dennison,
Good morning.
Vice President of Government and Public Affairs here at SMECO. And it is an honor to welcome two very distinguished members of our law enforcement community here, one of whom happens to be a SMECO employee. So, Jason, can you introduce yourself and what you do here at SMECO and how long you were a uniformed personnel?
Sure. My name is Jason Scott. I'm a security director here at SMECO. Prior Maryland State Police, was with the State Police for 23 years. Happy to say I'm starting my 6th year here at SMECO.
Well, we're glad you're here. And to your left is...
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody, and I appreciate you having me here today. It's an honor, truly. So my name is Steve Simonds. I'm a captain with the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Office. I'm currently assigned to the Patrol Division Community Services, and I can get in a little bit later of what that entails. But essentially, a brief overview is I oversee 4 district commanders. Our county, St. Mary's County, is divided into 4 districts, and I have one, basically District 1 would be up like north in Charlotte Hall. And then as you move south, District 2 is Leonardtown, Hollywood. As we move into California and parts of Great Mills is District 3. And then generally what you would consider Lexington Park rolls down into District 4. And each of those district commanders oversee their area of responsibility. I have a number of analysts that work under me that are work really well to connect the dots as far as crime trends and patterns. And we try to get ahead of those. And on the opposite side of that coin is patrol operations, which is overseen by another commander. But that's typically of what you would think like your patrol squads. So they're typically responding to the calls for service, whereas my division gets ahead of those calls. We support traffic safety. And most recently, over the last year, we started to inherit and absorb a lot of these special events that typically was handled by our special operations division. Some of the big ones we do each year is like the Christmas tree lighting in Leonardtown Square, the Veterans Day Parade, which I believe is one of the biggest.
Without a doubt, one of the biggest events.
Yes. So,
in the entire state, in terms of a parade for Veterans Day, I know, and it's obviously very, very big thing for St. Mary's County.
Absolutely.
So to your district, you said you have 4 districts.
Yes.
Do they rotate around the heads of those? Do they rotate or they stay in the same place?
So we like them to stay the same because they really develop relationships with a lot of our businesses, our communities, the homeowners associations. We want a static face. We want that relationship, that first point of contact. If we have an HOA or if we have a business that's having a particular problem, instead of just picking the phone up and hoping to get lucky to speak to somebody that might be able to help you out, they literally have a direct line to these district commanders and they can go straight to them. It's not meant to replace 911. It's not meant to replace emergency calls for service, but everything from quality of life calls to people that are trespassing. If it's not immediately happening in real time, they're a good conduit to get action taken.
Okay.
So I think the title of today's podcast was Hometown Heroes. And I don't think when you would go up to somebody in the community and you ask them, identify a hometown hero, I think police officers, firefighters, in some cases, SMECO personnel, linemen are very much considered in that category. So let's just kind of take a step back. And Jason, let's start with you. What was your kind of calling to get into law enforcement, and then when did you know you were going to go that route?
Tom, really at an early age in high school, I always was fascinated with law enforcement, police work, if you will. And the Maryland State Police, for whatever reason, stuck out to me. That's something that I always wanted to do. And fortunately for me, there's not a lot of people in this world, I think, that can say they lived their dream. And I can honestly say I did. So I enjoyed every second of it. But in saying that, retirement came, and I really enjoyed being here as well, just as equally as I did as being a Maryland State Trooper. But one of the things really was just, the old famous, like to help people. Obviously, there's that, right? And just that every day was always seemed to be different. And I enjoyed that it wasn't the same thing every day. So that's one of the things that kind of stuck out to me.
How about you, Mr. Simons?
I echo a lot of what he said. The only difference for me was I did not know at an early age. As a matter of fact, when I went to college for my bachelor's, it had nothing to do with public safety or law enforcement. It was mass communications.
Excellent.
So I ended up in a totally different field. Although, if I had to say one of the most important skills for public safety, for police in general, is communication. So I've seen situations get blown out of proportion because the communication fell short. But we've come a long ways with our training now and how to deal with people in deconfliction. And that's ultimately the goal, is to provide those services. And we sometimes police get a bad rap, and unfortunately in different parts, they bring it on themselves sometimes. However, I've just always spoken to people like I would want myself or my family to be spoken to. And sometimes, that will diffuse a situation tremendously.
Well, along those lines, we do have a lot of mental health issues, especially in St. Mary's County. We had a mental health person on one of our prior podcasts. So is it your side of the community side that handles those types of calls, or can just anybody? Are they all trained, all of you trained to handle those types of things where somebody might be in crisis and they need to be calmed down?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have training. It's CIT, which is crisis intervention training. And all of our officers go through that, and it ranges from, instruction to role playing. And these are the things that have come along over the years that when I started over 25 years ago, we just simply did not, we didn't. And I've seen, at least in my career, even though we don't have any, specialized social training, we're not trained in sociology or psychology, but oftentimes you do act as a counselor. I mean, when you deal with people, it's just the nature of the business. So this training for CIT is very beneficial, both for the deconfliction in dealing with people. And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, for mental crisis, that could be everything from mental disorders to substance abuse. And that definition differs for everybody, right? What does a crisis look like? You may just be having a bad day. Somebody might look at your situation and say, man, if that's the worst that happens to you today, I think you're doing pretty good. But we all handle stress differently, and we all have those bad days. So, it is an opportunity for us to really make a difference.
Sure.
And to be able to step in and leave a situation or a call for service. If we can't resolve it on the scene, we have a mental health behavioral specialist that works for us. And what the officer can do, even if it's not why we're there. So if we come for a domestic type of situation or whatever the call is, and the officer is picking up that you would be able to benefit from some of these social services, they flag it in our computer system. And then our behavioral health specialist will actually follow up with a telephone call. They'll reach back out to you, and they'll talk about that situation and see if you would benefit from any of the county services that we offer.
Well, that's great. So that's good to know.
Yeah, it's very great to know. And how long have you been on the force, if you will, in St. Mary's County?
I just hit year 25 last month.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. It's going by quick.
So 25 years. So from when you started until today, what have you seen as like the biggest maybe change or challenge that you face on a daily basis over your career?
So the mental health is definitely at the top of that list. And, if you think back, I'm sure everybody's been impacted, right? I'm sure if you know somebody that's been impacted by alcoholism or drug abuse or mental health, it's just natural as humans that we're going to experience that. So I have seen for like drug use, for example, when I first started, typically it was marijuana, crack cocaine was really big, cocaine. We didn't deal with heroin. We didn't deal with fentanyl. That wasn't a thing the first half of my career. And then not just to Southern Maryland, but this is across the country. Now, we could have a debate maybe of how did that come about. I can tell you, I personally have known people that were prescribed medications because of like accidents that they were in. I think there was some level of responsibility from doctors, the pharmaceutical companies, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with that. There have been instances, we're talking good people. A lot of good people make bad decisions. And sometimes when you open that door, it's hard to close. So, if your oxycodone is cut off and you have to resort to other means outside of your doctor, it's a very slippery slope. Thank God that naloxone came around, because I can testify firsthand how many lives that has saved over the last few years from fentanyl over doses.
Wow. So maybe we could move and talk a little bit about our relationship between SMECO and you guys, and some of the things that you've done for us. I know we had active shooter training a few years back, and Jason, I know, works really close with you.
We did, and I'll just start by saying we appreciate you guys coming in back in 2023. SMECO, we had an initiative to train our employees on active shooter. The Charles County Sheriff's Department provided training for our employees up here at the Hughesville location, and then the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Department provided that same training down in our Leonardtown location. So again, that's another good collaborative effort between us and your department.
And that's the kind of thing you hope you never need to know.
Yeah, absolutely right, Sonia. And I know we talked about it before in one of our previous podcasts, is just being able to have that direct contact, and the face with the name is crucial in a time of a crisis. And I work close with Captain Simonds. So if we ever need anything, we had that direct communication down to St. Mary's County.
I'll piggyback off that. Yeah. In an emergency type of situation, you don't want to make introductions, right? When you're scrambling, you already should have those networks in place. And we do. In my observation, I mean, SMECO is wonderful. I would like to talk about SMECO for a little bit. And I was thinking on the way over here, if I had a dime for every time that somebody told me I work for them, right? Because they pay my paycheck,
pay your salary, absolutely. Yeah.
I was wondering if you guys hear that from the co-op end of things, right?
All the time.
We also get free electricity, by the way.
Not.
How can I sign up for that? So, in my experience, I over the years, over the last more than 2 decades, so a lot of times we're in our own lanes and we don't always cross over, but oftentimes we do. Emergency management type of situations. And I'm talking more like both planned events. So we've had many a hurricane, and we know it's coming. We know there's going to potentially be trees that are down and down utility poles. And I'm laughing. You said, don't call it a telephone pole.
Man, I was going to give you credit. I was going to give you credit for saying utility pole. You get the A for the day for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, we end up on the same scenes of a lot of stuff. And sometimes, we can't move forward until you guys get there, because we don't want to be electrocuted.
Exactly.
And we don't know what's hot and what's not. So we appreciate it, and we depend on you all to take the lead. And then, we will hold the fort down, so to speak, if we need to close a road down while you complete your activity. I've been on many a times in like an incident command type of situation. We have a direct line. We work very closely with SMECO. Same with, we have representatives from fire and EMS and county roads, and those events really take an entire community partnership to include SMECO to bring it together. And during the storms, especially, I would argue that you guys maybe are perhaps the tip of that spear. I've been on many accident scenes, where those poles have been split in half, and, we have to wait for you guys to get there. And I don't touch anything. One interesting story. I had an officer, it's probably been 15 years ago, down on Peg Road, and he was in an accident and had gone off the roadway and struck a utility box, and it knocked the entire the entire cover off. And we were waiting, and it was dark, but it was getting light out, and so representative from SMECO showed up, and while we were waiting, the officers give me a walkthrough of what happened. And then we're standing next to this box, and he's starting to touch things in the box. And I said, I'm not an electrician, but let's get our hands away from the box. Well, your gentleman showed up, and I was telling him the story, and I said, out of curiosity, what would have happened if he had to touch this piece he was trying to? And I don't want to be too graphic for your viewers, but electricity will do crazy things to organic tissue when it pumps through it. And it was a bit descriptive, but let's just say it would have been much worse than the accident. So you guys, in some sense, are oftentimes public safety. You know, you're not carrying a gun and you're not maybe responding in the same method, but we rely on you as a public safety measure to successfully complete those events.
Good. That we should have that type of relationship.
Absolutely, and it really goes to show that you know, we have to work hand in hand. And I know if we brought in a number of our linemen and talked about the response, we try to get there as quickly and safely as we can, but we rely on law enforcement to, I mean, because it's amazing how dangerous line work is. But then a lot of guys will talk about how dangerous it is just to be alongside the road and, you know, vehicles just speeding past them and not paying attention and that type of thing. So I'm not telling you anything you don't know already, but talk a little bit about that and how maybe a word to the community about when they see work going on or they see your activities going on, to be mindful of how fast they're going and to be safe on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that, you know, and not just slowing down and taking notice, but if you can, it's a law now for police where if a police officer is on the side of the road pulling traffic, when it's safe to do so, you should get in the other lane.
Yes.
Now, I don't think it's a law for all utility vehicles, but I would highly recommend, I think that's a safe practice, whether it's a SMECO vehicle, a tow truck, it could be just somebody broken down with their hood up, a passenger. If you can, you know, take notice and, you know, prevent things before they happen.
Sure.
Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. You know, if you see a utility vehicle, SMECO, anything, if you can get over and move to the left or right, it's probably prudent to do so. It's for everybody's safety, for sure.
Well, we had an example. Our guys were working on the side of the road, and this was probably 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
A little like Toyota or something came past, and our guys, if they had been standing where they'd been standing like 30 seconds before, he would have hit them. So I think he was doing like 100 miles per hour or something and not paying attention.
Very dangerous. Sonia, I know one of the things that we deal with here at SMECO, and I hate to even bring it up, is issues with copper theft, where we'll have individuals who will try to get into substations. They'll go to job sites and steal copper because they're looking to make money. So, Captain, has that been something you've worked with us on, those types of cases?
Absolutely. And in my experience, a lot of those come in waves.
Okay.
You know, we'll have periods of calmness and quiet, and then you'll have a rash, whether it's a group working together, or sometimes it could be somebody that's been incarcerated, right? And that's their MO, and then they get out. And, you know, that sometimes is easier to piece together because the timing and everything. And St. Mary's, I will say, benefit to our deputies and our investigators. We have very high closure rates for cases. We take it personal in a professional way, meaning I started off in Prince George's County, and not to down Prince George's County because it's a different jurisdiction altogether, and the number of people that live there and that sort of thing. But when I first came to St. Mary's, there's a gentleman, another officer in the squad room. He was writing a report, and he was on his third page. This is before we had computers. We were actually handwriting them and carrying whiteout with us. And I thought he had a homicide or something, and somebody had stolen a candy bar and a soda from the 7-Eleven. But guess what? He closed that case. And if you can nip the little things, I think it sends a message like, hey, we don't want to tolerate that here. So, you know, it hopefully leads to reducing the bigger crimes. So right now, knock on wood, we don't have any big trends that we're seeing. But we also share information regionally within Southern Maryland. So you cannot be siloed, just St. Mary's, Charles, Calvert, PG. We have investigator work group meetings. We share information. That's all beneficial because we may not see a trend yet. And like catalytic converter thefts might be occurring in Charles County at a park and ride, and we know that could be coming our way. The copper thefts, we do see that. We've had instances where people will go into businesses or homes under construction. That's one method. You mentioned the substations. So when you guys do have problems, it's not uncommon that we will have premise checks done, and we'll send 2:00 in the morning to check those substations to make sure that there's nothing suspicious going on or no vehicles that shouldn't be there. After September 11th, at the time I was handling an explosives canine dog. And after 9/11, I almost regularly, on a weekly basis, was going by different substations and literally doing scans of those for any type of, devices and so forth.
And Steve, I'd like to add, you do have a few officers that have been combined task forces. And Sonia and Tom, about 3 years ago, we had an incident where individuals stealing from us in one of our yards. So we were able to pick up on that. And with that combined task force, we were able to do an operation, actually catch the individual and the act in the middle of the night. So it is those relationships that we have that is very important.
Big deal.
So when we do our our ERP, do we involve
this time
counties?
to answer your question, this time we did not. But the direction we're heading is next time we do an ERP event, we're going to have local stakeholders, and the sheriff's department would be one of them.
And do you all get involved in cyber crimes, or do you just that goes federal or?
So a lot of times it depends on the threshold. Cyber crimes are really difficult. They're not impossible, but a lot of times, so let's say a typical fraud, and somebody has gotten a hold of your information and they're opening bank accounts and they're ordering stuff online and having it delivered to some address that doesn't belong to them. We do investigate those. We actually have a detective that's pretty much all they handle are frauds. But a lot of times you'll have to subpoena like IP addresses. And then oftentimes it's not even local, right? You might be dealing with the originator of this crime could be sitting in a cafe in Europe somewhere, right? And it's very difficult to charge sometimes, and it's very difficult to get a conviction out of that. So I think preventive measures is the best course sometimes. You can't control everything. Our information, unfortunately, is floating out there. So much is public domain, so much is open source. Where there's a will, there's a way, but you try to minimize your risks of becoming a victim. I'm not advocating or I'm not selling any type of particular service, but there are a lot out there that will monitor and watch your credit card or that sort of thing and notify you if there's any unusual activity. Those are some steps that people can take, but just being tuned in. I'm guilty of this because my wife does a lot of our finances, so I'm not looking at every statement necessarily as closely as she does. But a lot of people wouldn't even realize if you had a charge that showed up, especially if it's a small charge. So just be on top, be tuned in, be aware. If you do have something, by all means, report it. I don't want to discourage anybody from filing a report just because it may or may not end in charges. But then a lot of your credit card companies, they work well, and as long as you report it, they can reimburse lost charges and stuff like that.
Yeah, my identity was stolen right at the beginning of COVID, and I knew it because somebody filed an unemployment claim in my name. So anyway, it's a big deal, and you guys did help me. I did file a report, but people need to, like you said, really pay attention to what's going through their bank statements and their credit cards.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that, from a SMECO perspective, we can do to make our relationship work better? Is there anything that you can think of that?
Well, I think there's always room for growth. I'm very satisfied with the current relationship that we have. I mean, you guys also have, in the past, let us utilize some of the buildings for training, because space is always a concern the more
Absolutely.
bigger groups that you get. So we are very much appreciative of that. But I think the big thing is, I mean, again, we don't overlap every single day, and other issues are coming along on both sides. I think we do a very good job, though, when those needs do arise, of being able to connect and handle business accordingly. So
Good. That's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I usually we try to ask, what's the one of the situations in your background as a law enforcement officer kind of stuck with you over all the years? Is there one thing that happened that really, still you think about today? You don't have to talk about it.
no, it's this kind of ties back to the whole mental health component, because again, when we started there, I think the philosophy was you see a lot of things, and PTSD and stress, and it's different for everybody, but you bottle a lot of that stuff up. For me personally, I have children. They're older now, but especially when they were younger, I think it really hit close to home. Calls that dealt with whether it was motor vehicle accident involving children, or if it was domestic incidences, it will eat at you, right? I mean, it's disheartening sometimes to walk into a situation, and sometimes you can have social services come and we can get children out of homes and stuff. But for me, that was always a button pusher, as anything with children. Certain calls for service that may, again, mental health, suicides, it's terrible. I mean, I would just urge anybody that's watching this, whether you know somebody, whether you're having these thoughts yourself, there truly is help out there. There are people to talk to. I think suicide is one of the worst things for the family that's left behind.
Right.
And I'm not judging anybody. Again, just like drug use, I'm sure everybody knows somebody connected that has been touched by that. But there's just more available now than there used to be. So I urge people to take advantage of that. And I've had to learn different ways to cope with stress, whether it be through exercise, which I probably need to do more of, or, just decompressing. But as far as your original question of any particular incidents, humbleness as a police officer, especially newer officers when they're starting off, right? They got this badge, this gun, they're all pumped up and ready to go. They're going to save the community. They're going to write everybody tickets. And, it's easy to lose. It's easy to lose touch with the human connection. So I had one call back when I first started. It was over 20 years ago. And I thought I had it all figured out. And I had to eat crow a little bit because a gas station in Leonardtown had called, and they said, this is when they would turn your gas pumps on and you could go in and pay cash afterwards.
Sure.
They don't do that mostly anymore. But they did it quite regularly. So they called and said, hey, this gentleman just filled up with gas and he didn't pay. And I got a tag number. So we ran the tag, got a good address. I show up not long after, and I think he had just gotten home. And I might have been a little smug about it, but professionally smug. So I said, sir, were you just at the gas station? I sure was, officer. I said, did you get gas? Absolutely. I filled up. I said, did you pay for it? I sure did, officer. Now, I knew, at least at the time, that he didn't pay for it. And so then I asked the question. I said, you don't happen to have a receipt, do you? And he goes, as a matter of fact, officer, I do. And he opens up his pocket and he pulls it out. And I felt this big, right? Because I stopped short of accusing him of what he did. That was a big lesson for me in humbleness and jumping to conclusions, because there's always three sides to every story. And I went back to that gas station and I set the record straight, but I'm thinking, what if this guy hadn't gotten a receipt, right? Like, this would have been a lot harder to prove. So luckily, I learned very early in my career not to jump to conclusions, to hear everybody out, to let the evidence speak for itself. And so for me, very small example, but a very humbling lesson in police work.
Yeah, that's great.
Wow, that's great. Wow, what a great story.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been great, and I just want to say on behalf of SMECO and certainly Sonia could say this as well, but thank you for what you do, Captain. It was great having you here. Thank you for working with Jason and all you all do every day, and we thank you for your service. So,
Yes.
If I could just add on, I don't want to take all the credit.
you're-
I'm fortunate enough to sit here and enjoy this time with you, but I would like to take that thanks and extend it not just to the men and women in St. Mary's County, but within Charles and Calvert and all law enforcement and public safety. I mean, it really takes a team, and we all need each other to be able to successfully pull this off. So I'd like to extend that thanks to everybody out there.
Without a
Of
doubt.
course.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much for coming in. And like Tom said, thank you for your service. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.